Okay, so I'm not sure what happened before this, but let's see if this at least makes sense just by reading it. The Gemara asks, with regard to the payment made by conspiring witnesses, which is categorized as monetary restitution, as the witnesses pay the precise sum that they conspired to cause the defendant to lose, let Rabbi Oshaya also teach it as one of the categories on his list. The Gemara answers, Rabbi Oshaya holds in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, who says that conspiring witnesses do not pay on the basis of their own admission. Evidently, theirs is not a payment of monetary restitution, rather it is a fine, as only one who was found liable based on the testimony of witnesses pays a fine, not one who was found liable based on his own admission.
Oh,
It's like they were caught lying and now they have to pay something.
so yes,
Conspiring
they
witness.
were conspiring, and then they have to pay something back. If but the idea is like if they admit it themselves, then they don't have to pay it back in the same way.
Okay.
The Gemara asks if Rabbi Oshaya holds in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, let him teach two distinct types of categories of damage under the rubric of ox. Let him teach one category for an ox that damages an ox or other property belonging to another person, and let him also teach the case if an ox injures a person.
Two distinct categories of damage. The Gemara explains its question. As we learned in a Mishnah 33a, in a case where the two parties damaged each other concurrently, Rabbi Akiva says the owner of the innocuous ox that injured a person also pays the full cost of the damage with regard to the difference between the damage caused by his ox and the damage that the person caused the ox. Rabbi Akiva holds that if an innocuous ox injures a person, the owner pays the full cost of the damage. Whereas if an innocuous ox damages another's property, then the owner is liable only for half the cost of the damage. Since the owner's liability in the two cases is different, each case should be classified as a distinct category, and Rabbi Oshaya should list them separately in his Baraita.
Cool. Awesome. The Gemara answers, didn't Rabbi Akiva break the force of his fist? Uh-oh. What?
Force of
Break
his
the force
fist?
of his fist. He significantly tempered the force of his statement as it is taught. Oh, okay. As it is taught in a Baraita that Rabbi Akiva says, one might have thought that even in the case of an innocuous ox that injured a person, the owner of the ox would pay from his superior quality property and not merely from the body of his animal. As in the case of the innocuous ox that damages the property, therefore, the verse states, with regard to an ox that gores a person, according to this judgment shall it be done to him, from which it is derived that the owner of the ox pays restitution exclusively from the proceeds of the sale of the body of his ox, and he does not pay from his superior quality property. The Mishnah states that one pays restitution from his superior quality property in instances of all primary categories of damage. Since in the case of an innocuous ox, sorry, since in the case of an innocuous ox that injured a person, even Rabbi Akiva concedes that the owner does not pay from his superior quality property. It should not be included in the list of primary categories.
What is the superior quality property?
So basically, the other stuff that the person owns, right?
They should
So
not be paying from that. They should only be paying. So they
paying
should
from the
not use.
ox.
So it's like I'm not ready to give up this ox. Here's some other money instead. But it's like they have to pay from the thing that caused the damage.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. What else could you like transfer that to? Like
Um,
if
I
your
don't know. I mean, I guess.
companies like it's like if your company did damage, here's some company money, not my
Okay.
personal money.
So like let's talk about a car, right? Because we're talking about an ox, so let's talk about a car because they're used sort of for the same
Yeah.
thing. Right? If your car, if you get into a car accident, your car injures somebody else, um, you're only paying the amount that your car is worth, and you're not having to pay like from your house.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I guess that sort of protects the damager too.
Yeah.
The Gemara asks, as for the rapist, the seducer, and the defamer, all of which cases are in which the offender pays monetary restitution, let Rabbi Ashaya teach them as categories in his list.
Oh.
This famous list.
The Gemara explains why Rabbi Shai did not teach them as separate categories. Whichever way you look at it, they should not be listed. If the payments listed by Rabbi Chia are for damage caused to the woman's body, which reduces her value, he already taught it. If the payments are for pain, he already taught it. If the payments are for humiliation, he already taught it. If the payments are for degradation, that too is payment for damage, which he already taught. What then have you to say? What is the nature of the payments paid by the rapist, the seducer mentioned by Rabbi Chia? In these cases, each payment is paid considered a fine. As and as explained, with regard to the case in which one is liable to pay a fine, Rabbi Shaya does not speak.
So Rabbi Shaya was only interested in something else. We're not really like sure what it was because we
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. We didn't come in on that point. The Gemara asks further, and one who causes another's terumah to become ritually impure, and one who mixes terumah with another's non-sacred food, and one who pours another's wine as a libation for idolatry, each of which is a case in which the offender must pay monetary restitution to compensate the owner for his loss due to the lowered value of his food or wine. Let Rabbi Oshaya teach them as categories in his list.
The Gemara answers, whichever way you look at it, these cases should not be listed. If Rabbi Oshaya holds that the damage is not evident, where the object is physically unchanged but its halachic status is changed, it is characterized as damage, for which one is liable to pay restitution. Rabbi Oshaya already taught, included in the list, restitution for damage. And if he holds that the damage is not evidence, damage that is not evidence is not characterized as damage, for which one is liable to pay restitution, then it is a fine. And as explained with regard to cases where one is liable to pay a fine, Rabbi Oshaya does not speak. So Rabbi Oshaya doesn't talk about any case in which like someone has to pay a fine. He only talks about cases in which they have to pay restitution.
Yeah, he was very specific, whatever he was doing. And so people, I don't know why people want to keep adding to his list. And he's like, no, that's, I'm very specific in what I created.
Yeah, he's like, not, nope, we're talking about fines. Not talking about fines here.
The Gemara suggests, since Rabbi Hia lists these cases as distinct categories, let us say that Rabbi Hia holds that damage that is not evident is not characterized as damage, for which one is liable to pay restitution, as if it were characterized as damage for which one is liable to pay restitution, didn't he already teach, i.e., include in his list, restitution for damage? The Gemara rejects that suggestion. Even if he holds that damage that is evident is characterized as damage for which one is liable to pay restitution, he distinguishes between different types of damage. He teaches cases of damage that is evident, and he teaches cases of damage that is not evident.
The Gemara considers the fact that each of the lists of primary categories is introduced with a number that they total. Granted, according to the Tanah of our Mishnah, he taught the number of 4 primary categories in introducing his list to exclude those additional categories of Rabbi Oshaya. And similarly, Rabbi Oshaya taught the number of 13 primary categories to exclude those additional categories of Rabbi Chia. What does that number of 24 primary categories of Rabbi Chia serve to exclude? I
So
don't know.
Rabbi Hia only had 4 and Rabbi Oshai had 13?
Yes.
Okay. The Gemara answers, he taught that number in order to exclude the cases of an informer who provides information to the authorities leading them to confiscate another person's property, and to exclude the case of a priest who renders an offering of pigul by performing the sacrificial rites for one offering with the intent to sacrifice it for the sake of another offering, in which case the person who brought the offering must replace it with another. So it's like, this is going to be a sacrifice for health, and never mind, we're going to make it a sacrifice for the community, something like that.
Yes, I guess. But I have a question. Is this essentially the Gemara saying snitches get stitches?
When the farmer provides information and gets paid for it, and
Ooh.
to include, and I don't understand the priest one. It's just, I guess it's somebody brings someone something to a priest, and the priest himself decides, never mind, I need this animal to be for the community sin offering instead, and not telling the person that brought the animal.
I guess. No. I'm sure there's something else that I'm not understanding in here. I have to look that up. The Gemara asks, and let Rabbi Chia teach these cases. Granted, he did not include the case of a priest who renders an offering pigul. Perhaps with regard to a case involving consecrated items, Rabbi Chia does not speak. But with regard to the case of an informer, what is the reason Rabbi Chia did not teach it and include it in the list of categories? The Gemara answers, the case of an informer is different as the damage is caused through speech. With
Mm,
regard to damage caused through speech, Rabbi Chia does not speak. Rabbi
that's
Chia doesn't talk about damage with regards to speech, obviously.
Rabbi Hia is also very specific. I like these guys. The Gemara asks, but isn't there the case of a defamer where the damage is caused through speech? And that
Yeah.
Rabbi teaches it and includes it in his list. The Gemara answers, he includes the case because it is a case of speech that involves an action. Well, informing is also an action. One who defames his wife is liable only if he has made his allegation after engaging in intercourse with her. Okay, that's a really specific way of saying that.
The Gemara asks, but isn't the case of conspiring witnesses a case of speech that involves no action, as they are liable for their testimony? And Rabbi Chia teaches it and includes it in his list. The Gemara answers, there, although it involves no action, the merciful one characterizes it as an action, as it is written, and you shall do to him as he conspired to do unto his brother.
Yeah, so just talking about it, talking is an action.
Yeah, remember earlier we were talking about like when speech is action versus when speech is not action, and there's this like weird line that they're drawing that I'm trying to figure out what that line is.
Yeah, because
Uh,
there's somewhere, I don't remember if it's the Torah or what, where they talk about even the thought of it can sometimes be considered an action, even though you haven't done anything to act on that thought. The Gemara considers the subcategories of the various primary categories listed. Granted, according to the Tana of our Mishnah, his terminology is understandable, as he taught primary categories, which by inference means that there are also additional forms of damage that are subcategories of those primary categories. But according to Rabbi Hia and Rabbi Oshaya, why did they employ the terminology they employed? They employed the term primary categories, which by inference means that there are subcategories. What are the subcategories of the primary categories they listed? It appears that they enumerated all the various categories of damage.
Rabbi Abahu says when Rabbi Chia and Rabbi Shaya characterize as primary categories the various categories of damage that they listed, it is not to indicate that there are subcategories. Rather, it is to indicate that all of them are characterized as primary categories in the sense that one is liable to pay from one's best quality property. Okay, so when they're talking about this best quality property situation, I think they're talking about like
Your choice flour and
tax
that kind of
brackets.
stuff.
I think they're talking about tax brackets, right? They're like if somebody has a lot of money, they have to pay from that like lot of money. Hold on, my dog is howling. Give me a second.
Okay.
Okay, we're better now.
Well,
Great.
I mean, all your money is still all your money. I just think about like the choice flour, the best heifer that you have, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like even though you're rich, doesn't mean that some of your money is better than other of your money. I like it when you see a question mark in Hebrew. It just looks so funny. The Gemara asks, what is the reason for this? I.e., from where is it derived? The Gemara explains, it is derived using a verbal analogy from the terms in place of, giving, he shall pay, and money. The term in place of is written with regard to a forewarned ox that you warned your ox, you better not gore someone, that gores, he shall he shall give is written with regard to an ox that kills a slave. He shall pay is written with regard to the categories of damage of eating and trampling, and money is written with regard to pit. The halacha that one must pay from his best quality property is stated explicitly in each of those four verses.
Mm.
Each of the 24 categories listed by Rabbi Hia, one of those four terms is written. So, by means of a verbal analogy, the requirement to pay from one's best quality property applies to each of them.
Okay. The Mishnah states the defining characteristic of the primary category of the ox is not similar to the defining characteristic of the primary category of maveh.
What is that?
I don't know. Let's look it up.
Okay. Is that another kind of animal?
Cassie. I hear my dog. No, not Maven. Maveh
Mave.
means man or tooth.
Oh, maybe that's the tooth for a tooth kind of thing.
Ah,
The category of mave.
the Gemara asks, what is the Mishnah saying? Rav Zevid says in the name of Rava that this is what the Mishnah is saying. Let the merciful one write one of the primary categories and derive the other categories from it. Then the Tana says it is not possible to derive one category from one other category, as each category has its unique characteristics.
So no subcategories. The Mishnah continues, and the defining characteristics of this category of ox and that category of maveh, in which there is a living spirit, are not similar to the defining characteristic of the category of fire, in which there is no living spirit. That's interesting. Why suddenly they bring up fire? The Gemara asks, what is the Tana saying? Rav Mesharshia said in the name of Rava that this is what the Tana is saying.
I think they're talking about a fire destroys something. There's no like living spirit in the fire itself, but if an ox person destroys something, there's living spirit in there.
Yeah, there was some kind of choice.
Yeah, I don't know. Let the merciful one write only two of the primary categories and derive the other categories from them. Then the Tana says it is not possible to derive one category from two other categories, as each category has its own unique characteristics, which prevent the derivation of a new category even from the combination of two categories.
Rava said, and with regard to all of the primary categories in the Mishnah, when you cast the primary category of pit among them, all of the rest of them can then be derived through an analogy based on the common factor of two categories. This is the case with all of the categories except for goring, due to the fact that there is room to refute the analogy to teach the halacha of goring with the following contention. What is notable about all of the other categories? They are notable in that they are forewarned from the outset. Yeah, because you didn't know that a goring was going to happen. Since it is the typical manner of the animal to trample and eat, and the typical manner of fire to burn, and the typical manner of a pit to serve as an obstacle, that's its whole purpose in life. The owner is always forewarned with regard to safeguarding against damage and is liable to pay full damages for his failure to prevent the damage even the first time. It's like you should have known because this is its nature. With regard to goring, the animal is innocuous for the first three instances of damage, and only thereafter is the animal forewarned, rendering its owner liable to pay full damages.
Cool. And according to one who says, on the contrary, goring is superior in the sense that one's liability in the case of a goring is more apparent, as the objective of the ox's action is to cause damage. Even the goring can be derived from the common factor of two sources. How common of oxes just randomly goring people?
I know, that must have been common enough that they had to go talk about it. The Gemara asks, but oxes are generally nice animals.
Right.
You have to do something to really make them be provoked and stuff.
They're innocuous.
The Gemara asks, but if all the categories can be derived from another category, and pit, for the purpose of deriving what halacha did the merciful one write all the primary categories explicitly? Oh, I didn't know how to read that really. And pit, for the purpose of deriving what halacha did the merciful one write all the primary categories explicitly? The Gemara answers, it is in order to derive their unique halachot that apply exclusively to each category. So the Torah was written, and people are like, what does it mean? Like all of the Talmud, I guess.
Goring is written explicitly in order to distinguish between the halachot of damage caused by an innocuous animal and damage caused by a forewarned animal.
Eating and trampling are written explicitly in order to exempt from liability those whose animals perform the actions in these categories in a public domain.
Pit is written explicitly in order to exempt one from the liability for damage to vessels caused when they fall into a pit. The Gemara adds, and according to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, who deems one liable even for damage to vessels when caused when they fall into a pit, pit was written in order to exempt one from liability for the death of a person who was killed by falling into a pit. Rabbi Yehuda concedes that the possessor of the pit is exempt because the person who ultimately fell into the pit was capable of avoiding it.
Ooh. What if you had you purposefully dug a whole bunch of pits on your property, and now if anyone wants to get to your house, they have to
avoid these pits,
and it's still not your fault. Man is written explicitly in order to render him liable for 4 additional types of indemnity, beyond the payment of the damages for the diminution in value caused when one injures a person.
Fire is written explicitly in order to exempt one from liability for damage caused to a concealed object, i.e. one hidden by grain, that was consumed by fire. The Gemara asks, and according to Rabbi Yehuda, who deemed one liable even for damage done to a concealed object damaged by fire, to add, what halakha does the Torah mention the category of fire explicitly? I'm excited to find out.
Yeah. Okay. So it's like if I start a fire and I'm sorry I burned your house down or something, but like I didn't know that you had that concealed magazine. I don't know, something like that.
I'm not responsible for your concealed magazine.
Yeah. But I guess I'm responsible for the rest of your house, though.
Yeah, because that wasn't concealed.
Yeah. All right.
How fun.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.